Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another DFO Fantasy Show. It is Tuesday, December the 2nd, and I'm your host, Brock Seguin, managing fantasy editor of dailyfaceoff.com. And today, we've got fantasy hockey news and notes. We've got Brock's Lock of the Day and a new segment called Keep or Cut. I asked dailyfaceoff.com users who they were considering dropping, so I took a deep dive into the numbers to see whether or not you should keep these players or cut them. So we're going to go through 10 players in the second half of the show, but let's get started with the news and notes for December 2nd. We will start with the Carolina Hurricanes, where Pyotr Kochetkov returned to practice on Tuesday. Still unclear, though, when he'll be back between the pipes for the Hurricanes. But obviously getting back on the ice is a big step, and it doesn't look like he's going to miss an extended period of time like he did early in the season. And Jacob Slavin was also back on the ice for the Hurricanes today, but in a non-contact jersey. So still seems like he's a ways away from his season debut, but good to see Jacob Slavin back on the ice for the Hurricanes. Now to Colorado, where it looks like they could get Valeri Nichushkin back in the lineup. He's been out with a lower body injury since November the 11th. So that would obviously be a huge return, and it'll be an even bigger return if Nathan MacKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, and Parker Kelly, all three of them missed practice on Monday due to an illness and are questionable to play Tuesday. It didn't sound like there was an overwhelming concern about MacKinnon or Landeskog potentially missing the game, but obviously if either of them are out, that would be a massive loss, especially, obviously MacKinnon, no question about that, but the way that Gabriel Landeskog is really starting to come on would be a big loss, but monitor their statuses here this afternoon. Now to Boston, who is in Detroit this evening. David Pastrnak did not travel to Detroit, so he'll miss Tuesday's game. But Victor Arvidsson was back at practice on Monday, and he did travel and is expected to play against the Red Wings on Tuesday. A couple more minor updates here. We've got Jimmy Snuggerud. He'll undergo surgery on his left wrist. He'll be reevaluated in 6 weeks. And Alexei Toropchenko is also week to week after sustaining burns to his legs in a home accident. The random home or cooking incidents or dinner incidents that are going on in the NHL, it seems like a weekly occurrence now or a bi-weekly occurrence. So I hate to laugh at it, but some of these injury updates are outrageous this season. So interesting update there again. And then the last bit of news, we've got Tyson Forrester. I mentioned him as a potential streamer yesterday. He left Monday's game, unfortunately, with an upper body injury and did not return. So that's going to do it for this edition of the news and notes. Let's get into Brock's Lock of the Day. And this segment is a presentation of Betway. Join the action and download the Betway app. Create an account today and enjoy our sign-up bonus, 18 plus, and please play responsibly. As always, we have our tracker here today, and yesterday Jack Quinn hit the over 1.5 shots on goal at -140 to get us back in the win column, bringing us to 16-10 on the season. We are up 4.9 units, 15.4% ROI, and as always, the 5v5 hockey model is what powers today's Brock's Lock of the Day. And today we're going to click on Cale Makar, who has a score of 99, so feeling pretty good about Cale Makar in this one. Makar is over 2.5 shots on goal at -145. He has hit this mark, as you see on screen here, in 4 straight games while averaging 4.0 shots on goal and 6.3 shot attempts per game. He's also hit this mark in 8 of his last 11 games. That is a 72.7% hit rate, the equivalent of -266. And tonight you get it at -145 against a Canucks team that has given up the 6th most shots on goal and the 6th most shot attempts per game over their last 10 games. So really, really good matchup here for Makar, who's been hitting this prop with regularity, as you see here on Betway, -145. In his only meeting against the Canucks so far this season, Makar had 3 shots on goal, so he hit this mark. He also had 8 shot attempts in that game. So really like his chances to bring us to 17-10 on the season. That is going to do it for this Brock's Lock of the Day. Now let's get into the new segment, Keep or Cut. So as I mentioned, I asked Daily Faceoff users, which players are you considering dropping? Who's bugging you right now? Who's on your team is not performing the way you'd expect, and should you drop them? So they're not in any particular order other than just ownership. We're going to go from the highest owned to the lowest owned. We'll start with the forwards. We'll get to the defensemen at the end. So we'll start with our highest owned forward here, and it's Dylan Guenther of the Utah Mammoth at 91% rostered. Now, I was pretty surprised myself to see Guenther's name pop up when I was asking for players to drop it. And honestly, he hasn't been great lately. He has just 7 points, 4 goals, 3 assists in his last 16 games, but I'm not that concerned. There have been 7.7 goals scored below expected with Guenther on the ice during that stretch. That's the 25th worst mark in the league over that span. Some of that is his doing, obviously scoring goals below expected on a personal level as well. He shot just 7.7% during the month of November while being a career 12.8% finisher. So Guenther is a very streaky scorer and puts up points in bunches. And he had some of these stretches last year, although this year feels a little like this stretch right now feels a little bit prolonged and a little bit longer than what we were used to seeing last year. But he usually responds with an absolutely red hot stretch of production. So, yeah, I'm not worried about Guenther. I'm not dropping him. I think at the very least, bare minimum, you can expect another 25 goals, 25 assists from Guenther this season, and you're not going to find that kind of production on the waiver wire. So unless it's like the shallowest league of all time, I'm not moving on from Dylan Guenther. Next on the list is Quinton Byfield, 76% rostered for the LA Kings. I feel good about Byfield too. I'm not dropping him either. He's playing and shooting more than he ever has in his career. And I think the numbers are going to start to come around for him. And I'm just not dropping him right now. The 4 goals are obviously frustrating, but he's shooting just 6.8% and has shot 11.6% coming into this season. So that's obviously something I do think will correct itself over time. His 4 goals scored below expected on an individual level is the 10th worst mark in the NHL. So few players are expected to see positive regression in the goal department as much as Byfield is. And if the goals start to flow, I think he's going to be in great shape because he's already on pace for 50 assists. So he's got a pretty good season going. Just been a little bit unfortunate in the goal scoring department. Certainly not looking to move on from Quinton Byfield. Now let's get into some of the dicier ones. We'll start with Juraj Slafkovsky of the Montreal Canadiens, one of 2 Canadiens we'll talk about on today's show. The problem with Slafkovsky right now is deployment. When he's with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, I want to roster Slafkovsky. But when he's on that second line, I want nothing to do with him outside of banger formats where he's contributed 44 hits so far this year. But these numbers are just terrible. His on-ice expected goals for per 60 with Caulfield and Suzuki is 3.25 per 60. That drops to 1.94 when he's not with Suzuki or Caulfield at 5v5. So you're not going to get very much production from him at 5v5 when he is not on that line. There's not enough scoring chance generation when he's away from Caulfield and Suzuki. So right now, don't like Juraj Slafkovsky. But it's tough to recommend whether to keep or cut him because right now, while he's on line 2, he's a drop. But if he's promoted back to line 1 tonight or tomorrow, I would want to roster him. So in more standard formats, it depends who's available on your wire. He's kind of in that fringe territory for me. If you've got somebody that you really like on the wire, I wouldn't really hesitate to drop him with his current deployment, but I would be monitoring whether he gets bumped back up to that top line because the second he is, I want him back on my roster. In banger formats, he's a hold still. He contributes a lot there, and I do think he'll be back on that top line before too long. So this one's more of a wishy-washy answer. It just kind of depends what your format is and who's available on your wire. I'm not dropping him for just anybody, but if you got somebody that you really like and maybe listen to tomorrow's episode, Waiver Wire Wednesday with Beebs Bondy, and if we have somebody that we just absolutely love, then maybe drop Slafkovsky for them if you're in those more standard formats. Now, somebody who seems to get talked about on every time we do one of these episodes, Andrei Svechnikov, 65% rostered, left wing, right wing eligible from the Carolina Hurricanes. I personally just think that people love to hate Svechnikov. And I mean, he left owners with a sour taste in their mouth to start the season, going pointless in his first 8 games of the season. It's a surefire way to piss off your fantasy owners. But he has responded with 14 points, 7 goals, 7 assists in his last 17 games. So that's actually a 34 goal, 34 assist pace. And he's also, during that time, on pace for 280 shots on goal and 125 hits. So it's obviously not a super big sample size, but that's a 17-game sample that's basically been the best production of his career. Like that pace would be the best season he's ever had. So I'm not dropping him, especially not right now while he's getting an extended run with Aho and Jarvis. I think a lot of the frustration with owning Svechnikov has been Rod Brindamore's willingness to kind of shuffle that lineup around a lot. And Svechnikov seems to be the one that gets affected by it the most, right? In the past, he's been going from the Aho line for a couple games to the second line to the third line, and it gets frustrating when he's playing with Stahl and Martinook and not generating quite as much. But right now, he's been on an extended run with Aho and Jarvis, and you don't have to worry about that ending. I don't think anytime soon. At practice today, he was still on that line. And that's a line that's really been dominant, as you might imagine they would be at 5v5, 3.2 expected goals for per 60. Really, really good numbers. The problem with Svechnikov and a lot of these Carolina Hurricanes players right now is this power play is just terrible. 13.7% conversion right now. That's the third worst mark in the NHL. So that power play has got enough talent that I do think it's going to figure itself out. They've never really been an elite power play unit. Like last year, they were kind of middling as well. But if they get back up closer to like 18, 19, 20%, then you're going to see a little bit more production from guys like Svechnikov and even more production from guys like Jarvis and Aho and company. So, yeah, I think right now, while he's on that top line with the way he's played his last 17 games, I'm not really looking to move on from Svechnikov right now. And if people are considering dropping him, I would be certainly offering, low ball trade offers for Svechnikov right now. Let's go to St. Louis, where Jordan Kyrou is 62% roster. Did score last night, but Kyrou is a bit of a tricky case because his shot volume is good enough. Like, it's as good as it always is, and it's good enough for him to be a 30-plus goal scorer for the fourth straight season. The problem is his usage is down, and he's actually missing the net more frequently than he usually does. So the shot attempts are the same as they always are. The shots on goal are down a bit because he's missing the net more frequently. The metrics suggest that he could have roughly 4 more points than he does right now. But even if he did, he would only be on pace for 60 points this season. And a 60-point player without scoring 30 goals is basically who Nick Schmaltz was for the last couple of seasons. And he was a guy that was always about 25% rostered, a fringe roster player, a streaming candidate. And that's kind of likely where you're headed with Kyrou. Right now, he is 142nd in terms of on-ice expected goals for per game. He's 112th in individual expected goals for per game among forwards. Those are not attractive rates. Those are bad. So I wouldn't really hesitate to drop him in shallower leagues. In standard formats, I still think you need to try to find like a 30-goal scorer on the wire to really justify dropping him, and those aren't easy to find. So again, similar to Slafkovsky, I'm not dropping him outright like in every format. I think it depends who's available on the wire. He's somebody that I'm going to be, I think you kind of have to hold on to, but it's going to be a frustrating ride. We're going to talk about another Blues player a little bit later, and I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that this offense is just not scoring. Last night, they played against the worst defensive team in the league, or one of the worst defensive teams in the league, the Ducks, and Ville Husso between the pipes, and they still weren't really able to do much and lost the game. Kyrou did score, but I think he's going to be a frustrating hold. And in shallower formats, I would be looking to move on. Let's get into some guys that I'm definitely dropping right now. The next is Ivan Demidov of the Montreal Canadiens. He is just 61% rostered. So let me be very clear. I think Demidov is a fine hold moving forward in dynasty and keeper formats, obviously. In non-keeper redraft formats, I'm dropping him. On the surface, his production has been okay. He has 19 points, 6 goals, 13 assists in 24 games. But he's played just 14-20 per game and barely averages over 1 shot per game. His on-ice goals scored above expected is the 3rd highest mark in the NHL. His individual goals scored above expected is 36th highest. Those are both fueled by a 21.7 on-ice shooting percentage and a 21.4 personal shooting percentage, both just ridiculously high and not sustainable whatsoever. So the first thing I would do with Demidov, because he's still a young, attractive name. In fact, I saw TSN release like a list of their best players under 25 years old, and Ivan Demidov was ranked ahead of Lucas Raymond, which is in itself outrageous and completely ridiculous. It's not even close to being true. Maybe it was RangeMate. If it was, it got me. But like that just goes to show how he's kind of viewed in the general public and the general eye. So the first thing I would be doing is trying to sell high on him because again, the counting stats, 19 points, 24 games, really high profile player. You might be able to sell him high, quote unquote. It'll feel like you're selling him high, but what's really happening under the hood is bad. So if you don't get any bites on those trade offers, I wouldn't hesitate to move on in redraft leagues. But because the reality is just not great here with Demidov. So try to sell high on the name value. And again, 19 points in 24 games doesn't look bad on the surface, but boy, when you dig in, it gets ugly. Let's talk about Matvei Michkov now for the Philadelphia Flyers, down to 57% roster. So people are already dropping him, and somebody that I'm not hesitating to drop either. Again, similar to Demidov, Keeper, redraft, keeper dynasty leagues, holding. Redraft leagues, dropping. I've seen enough, and I just don't think it's going to get much better this season. The Flyers seem to trust wingers like Trevor Zegras, Tyson Forrester, Owen Tippett, Bobby Brink a lot more than Michkov, and his ice time is suffering. Even with his recent surge in goals, he's still only averaging 15.37 time on ice per game and 2.3 shots on goal per game. And he's had to shoot 26% to score 7 goals in his last 12 games. So that's just not sustainable. The goal production has been nice lately, but it's just not going to continue. Now, the caveat here with Michkov is if Tyson Forrester is going to miss an extended period of time, which we don't know as of this recording, he could earn more minutes. So I would maybe hold on to him for like a couple days to figure out what's going on with Forrester and how it might affect Michkov. But if Forrester is just kind of day to day, I don't really care about Michkov right now. There's just not much in the data to suggest that things will get drastically better in the coming months. I think you're looking at like a 25 goal, 25 assist player for the season. And unless the usage spikes drastically, I just don't think that anything better than that is very likely. So the usage is just not great in redraft formats. I think, it's going to be a tough season here for Michkov, which is unfortunate because he was drafted pretty high in fantasy this year. And yeah, you're kind of left here wanting to hold on just because of the draft day value that you spent, but it's just, I think you can find better players on the wire right now. Let's go back to St. Louis now, where we're talking about Dylan Holloway, 57% rostered. Again, like Kyrou, disliking Holloway's fantasy outlook is a little bit more of a knock on the Blues as a whole than it is disliking the player individually. But outside of bagger formats where you have to keep him, in bagger formats, he's still a great option. 68 hits on the season in 27 games. But outside of the bagger format and outside of his hitting, his fantasy profile is very vanilla. He has very modest shot volume. And again, there's not much in the data to suggest that Holloway's numbers are going to improve in the near future. If you combine his per game on ice expected goals for, his per game on ice offensive driving plays, and his per game individual expected goals, he grades out as the 147th best forward in the NHL. In the on ice expected goals for, he's 152nd. In the offensive driving plays, he's 104th. And in the individual expected goals, he's 181st among forwards. It's just not fantasy relevant in leagues that don't include hits. So yeah, non-bagger formats, I don't mind moving on from Holloway whatsoever. Couple blue liners to talk about before we close out the show. Let's go back to Utah, where we're talking about Mikhail Sergachev. Shocked that his name popped up. He's a definite hold for me. The production has obviously cooled off over the last couple of weeks, but that won't continue. The shot volume has been absolutely great. The goals will come. He's a double-digit goal scorer for sure on the back end. And I talked about with the Hurricanes. A lot of the Mammoth struggles have been purely driven by the fact that the power play has sucked. As a team, during that stretch where Sergachev has struggled over the last couple of weeks, they have scored 8.1 goals below expected. It's one of the worst marks in the league. That includes 5.8 goals scored below expected while Sergachev's on the ice. So most of that is, a lot of it's coming on the power play. They're just not converting. That's the 10th worst mark in the NHL for Sergachev over that time. So on the year, he has the 11th best on ice expected goals for per game among defensemen, and he's top 24 in offensive driving plays. So he's on the ice, generating a lot of chances, and a lot of those chances he's factoring in on moving the puck, and he's going to pick up points. So yeah, I still think that Sergachev is a high-end fantasy blue liner and is more of a buy low option for me right now than a drop candidate. I will say, Sean Durzi did see some time on power play 1 the other day. Then they went back to Sergachev yesterday. But if this power play continues to suffer, I do think there's the potential that Sergachev loses a little bit of that power play 1 stronghold that he has right now, and Durzi could factor in a little bit more. That would have me a little bit more hesitant if Durzi gets an extended period of, extended run and that power play starts to click. I'll start to get a little bit more nervous about Sergachev at that point. But right now, he's an obvious hold, and honestly, probably somebody I'm targeting a little bit. But I also think in the same breath, Sean Durzi is a very low-key, interesting pickup right now, because if that does kind of come to fruition, he's already a guy with a good floor in extended formats. If he does start to see that power play 1 time, Durzi's going to be in a really, really good spot. The last name we're going to talk about today is Seth Jones of the Florida Panthers, 83% rostered. Honestly, I don't know what people expect. He's doing exactly what he does. He's on pace for double-digit goals for the 4th time in his career. He's on pace for 44 points, which would be the 4th highest total of his career. So it's actually a better year than what we're used to seeing out of Seth Jones. So it's nearly identical to the pace that I had projected for him in the preseason. So if you drafted him expecting anything more, you kind of set yourself up for disappointment. He was never going to be a guy that was going to finish the year as a top 5 fantasy defenseman with this crazy upside. He's never going to be a league winner, but he's able to provide you with stable, albeit potentially unspectacular fantasy results. And I think kind of when it's all said and done, we're probably looking at a top 25 blue liner here. And that's fine. That's kind of what you probably drafted him looking for a little bit more, but you drafted him as your number 2 fantasy defenseman. That's probably what you're going to get, potentially low end fantasy, number 2 fantasy value. But yeah, I think it's fine. I think the one thing to say about Seth Jones is a lot of the production has come on the power play, and he's got a stronghold there, it seems, on that power play one. So that's the good news. I think honestly, the good news too is that it's a lot of this production has come without any 5v5 production. And that's not usually a good indicator, but this is a Panthers team that's just really struggled to score goals. And by the metrics, they're a team that should see better days ahead in terms of the 5v5 goal production. And we've started to see that come along a little bit. Guys like Carter Verhaeghe getting to go in a little bit. Like they need to figure it out a little bit and get that 5v5 offense going. And when that happens, Seth Jones will start to pick up additional points. And that will really complement his power play production that's been nice, very nicely. So yeah, 8 of his 14 points coming on the power play so far this season. That's a team that really needs to get it going at 5v5, but I think they're starting to trend in the right direction. And I like a lot of these Panthers guys as buy lows right now. Like the Verhaeghes who have been dropped, like I'm picking them up or I'm buying low on them. I do think that they're going to figure it out here and get that engine going here in the new future. So anyways, that's going to do it for this edition of the DFO Fantasy Show. That's going to do it for Keeper Cut. Hopefully you liked the Keeper Cut segment. If you've ever got anybody that you're wondering about, hey, should I keep this guy? Should I drop this guy? Feel free to reach out. I think we're going to bring Keeper Cut back, reoccurring. I kind of buried the lead. This was supposed to be Steven Ellis Dynasty Keeper episode. Steven couldn't come on today, so we did Keeper Cut. I think what we're going to do moving forward is alternate each week. We'll have Steven come on and do Dynasty and Keepers, and then the next week on Tuesday, we'll do Keeper Cut. We'll keep kind of doing that revolving rotation there with those two on Tuesday. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button, hit the subscribe button as well. We'll see you back here tomorrow for Waiver Wire Wednesday with Beams Bondy. Thanks for watching this video. If you want more great fantasy hockey and betting content from myself, Carter Hutton, Matthew Barnaby, and the rest of the DFO analysts, make sure you subscribe to the DFO Fantasy and Betting YouTube channel today and never miss a minute.